Well, now we're on just a tad early. Um, so, one of the things I did in the post that should be everywhere is that this is the first time that I have done a show live on LinkedIn. And so I'm looking forward to that. So, today's show, what are we doing today? And I've got less than a minute. So, let me put on the radio station here and we'll have a little background noise. Well, that's if it loads. Let's go here, people. So anyway, I came into radio to avoid getting in front of a camera. That's why I didn't go into television. Not that I have any real desire to be a broadcaster. I don't really. I seriously mean it. Where I'm coming from is that I'm a radio guy, and not that I grew up in the industry, just that there's something about radio I really like. So anyway, let's see where we are status wise before we get rolling here. I know I'm live. I'm live here on Facebook. I'm live on LinkedIn, but I'm not live on the air yet on the radio station. So let me see here. What's going on? Okay. It's not going to help me. I can see that right now. There we are. Let's see what's going on here. Yes, I just had a member of the executive team say they love the background.
Are you looking to establish your business
Yeah, who's that guy?
globally? Are you looking to establish yourself and your business as experts? Are you looking to create professional marketing materials such as podcasts, collateral for websites, brochures, and media kits? Then join us. We are Profit Radio. We are entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Every host is a business owner sharing their expertise with other owners. There is no other option at this price point that will give you the reach and professional image as IBGR. Join us by going to...
Now, don't use me as a role model for that, okay? Because I'm not quite the role model for it. Okay, so now we're about ready to roll. We're going to be on the air in about a minute and a half. Yeah, about that, or a little less. No, about 50 seconds. And so anyway, what I'm doing today is I'm going back to my consulting days. And in fact, one of the things I thought is that I would share with you what I've done over the years to build consulting firms. Now, I hit on a lot of this last week. In this piece, I rushed through just a tad, and I want to spend more time with it because I've got a pretty good process. I think you'll find that it works. It's also an excellent coaching process. Not that I've done any professional coaching, but I've done a lot of consulting. And I'll tell the story when we start off. I will tell the story around that. So it looks like we're getting pretty close. I ought to be running some music. I think that's what I'm going to do next time. I think I'll put some music in the background. I really like the one that we're doing for Biz Talk Radio. All right, so here we go. We're down to about 20 seconds before we start. And I greatly appreciate all of you on Facebook and on LinkedIn who are going to put up with my ugly mug. So if you want, close your eyes and listen to what I got to say. Because, in fact, you may find it pretty relevant. Here we go. So let me treat you like a radio station, okay? 3, 2. Good morning, good day, or good evening, depending upon where you are on planet Earth. You're listening to IBGR.network. I almost said IBGR.news because I do the news twice a day, and sometimes I forget. At least I'm not doing what I used to do. When we ran a different radio station, I have this thing about saying, and now you're listening to WNTW 92.7 FM, 820 AM from Chester, Virginia. We're no longer there. This is IBGR Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for today's show. And what's important is we are broadcasting live from our studios in North America, just outside of gorgeous, beautiful downtown Richmond, Virginia, on the James River. Now, today's show. Well, today we're going to be taking our theme of consulting and we're going to be taking it a step further. All right. And what I mean by that, here we are, is that we're talking about how to create or build a consulting firm. And I thought that would probably be pretty relevant after what's happened with the pandemic. And those of you out there who are professionals, but just a little bit tired of this pandemic stuff, And I don't want to get into that debate, okay, because that's above my pay grade. I do have a degree in engineering. I did work as a scientist, but I'm not in biology. In fact, I got by in biology pretty well, but biochemistry almost bilged me out of school. All right. So now here's the point, and that is the pandemic comes along every once in a while, but not the pandemic, the black swan. If you're familiar with the work of Nassim Taleb, his premise, and it's quite true because he looked at history, we have these black swan events. A black swan is get 100 swans in a pond, they're all white. How do they have a black chick? Now, you know what's going to happen. You just can't predict which mating pair is going to produce that. Well, he used that as his premise behind the idea of every once in a while throughout the world, things happened that in hindsight you go, oh, I should have saw that coming. The reality is you don't. The pandemic was one thing. Now, if we go back until 27 and 28, what you had is you had the banking crisis. Now, in hindsight, you could say, well, you should have saw that coming, but it almost shut down the world. And so you could go back through history and you can see these black swan events. Now, the relevance to this conversation is if you have a business that requires a lot of personal interaction where we've got to run into each other, we got to spend time together, is that you are at the mercy of these events. What happens in the next lockdown? How many of you either went out of business, and that's why you're listening to this, and thinking, oh, maybe I can make it as a consultant, or you have friends that were put out of business? How do I plan for that? How do I work around that? And that's really what I'm doing in this whole series. This is shows CIB, which is creating and I originally was going to call it a C for creating, I for improvement, and B for business. But the feedback I got from the executive team and some of our on-air hosts is that, what are you doing, a fix-up show? You know, we're talking about home improvement. No. So I put consulting in there. And now we're going to be talking about specifically delivering coaching, I want to say coaching, consulting virtually. All right. And again, my name is William Eastman. Now, the way you get into the game is show notes. The way to get to show notes is to go to the website. So go to ibgr.network. Now, IBGR is our call sign, just like any other radio station. The only difference between us and everybody else is that we use the internet as a broadcast tower, as opposed to having a broadcast tower that's regulated by some government entity, which tells you how powerful, how far you can go, how many people you have. Yep, you want to be in that business, go right ahead. We might go back and buy a few stations here down the road, but right now we're going to use the internet as a broadcast tower. So the I originally in IBGR stood for internet, but really it's international. We are currently heard in 178 countries around the world. In fact, this weekend we picked up number 178, Togo, which is right along the Atlantic coast between Benin and Nigeria. And so I'm very happy to have them on board. The BG of IBGR stands for business growth. What we do 23 hours a day now, because we have live news shows, 23 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then 2 days a week, 24 hours a day. What are we talking about? How to start, grow, or if you're at that point in your career, exit your business. So go to ibgr.network. It is our URL, our call sign, our name, and our broadcast frequency. When you get there, you'll see notes. Click notes. And when you get there, and it'll bring up a whole set of notes. If you're listening to this live or you're watching this live, then it should be the first one in the queue, CIB.08. If, on the other hand, you're listening to as a replay, or it's a podcast with one of our partner organizations, then you're going to have to look for it. And I got the easiest way of doing it right next to where you see a CIB.08 or all of the shows that are currently hot. New Choice for Business Search, you put in CIB.08, creating a coaching / improvement business, and we have got it. It'll pop up, and let's go there. All right. Now, so here's my introduction. All right. So, when we talk about this issue of consulting, I think one of the areas that I'm noticing here, and I had a good friend, so this is one of the stories I want to start with. I had a very good friend who was, about 55, 56 years old. He was a corporate executive, well-known, had a good reputation, was making very decent numbers. It was his yearly check had a comma in it, and it had 6 digits, and the first number wasn't a 1. Well, he got not laid off, but let's just say he got organized out. The pandemic forced him to basically downsize a great deal, and suddenly is out. Now he's thinking, okay, I can go out and get a good job. I need a job for about 10 years. And he went out in the job market. And you know what? Guy can't get a job. And the reason he can't get a job is age. Now, I think ageism is true. This is not a show on ageism, but here's a guy who wants to work. I mean, he probably has enough money stashed that he could retire, but why? He's got a lot to offer. Or maybe he didn't have enough money. Doesn't matter. Who should be forced at 55 years old to call it quits and leave? One of the options available to you. In fact, we had somebody on here who was a host a couple seasons back who did exactly this. He had a PhD in civil engineering. And what does he have now? His own coaching firm. What is he doing? He's figured out how to do that remotely and do that virtually. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So here's some things that I'm going to do as kind of a reminder from previous shows. So what do you need to know? All right. Number one is we talk about this. And by the way, the context of this show is the other shows, which is always a stunt in radio, because on the one hand, you're telling a story. Like we run a business quarter, a season, we call it here. And so what I tell our hosts, and I do it myself, is that the name of this, start your own coaching or improvement business, is the name of the book. And then each week represents a chapter in that book. Now, the challenge you have is if somebody doesn't listen to the previous chapters, imagine picking up a book that you saw the title, say that's interesting. And in this particular case, you start at chapter 8. Well, now that could prove to be interesting. So what I have to do is I have to do two things. One is catch everybody up who has not had the other chapters. On the other hand, if you have, I don't want to bore you to death. So what we talked about previously, and I'm going to drill down much more on this. Number one is in the consulting industry right now today, especially if what you're going to do is go for small businesses and not large businesses, is you don't want to sell individual services. And there's many reasons for it. And I'll come back when I explain it. So that's number one. You want to build bundles. Number two is your bundles want to be based upon some value ladder, some way that you have tiered your offer. Number three is anything that does not require you talking to somebody else, whether it's face-to-face. In this particular case, face-to-face is with a camera, whether it's Zoom, whether it's StreamYard, Google Meet, or any other platform. One of the ones that we're investigating right now that we're pretty hot on, you might want to check them out, is a company called Air Meet. Air and Meet together, an Indian startup, great platform. So, but then, even then, you're going to do this because there's going to have to be some visual contact. All right. So, what else can I automate? And then the last one I'm going to talk about and I'm going to build on is the issues that you need a platform. You absolutely have to, if you're going to scale this business, you're going to have to scale it from a platform. Now, could that be considered automate personal functions? Somewhat. And that the way I would automate it, the way we have automated it, is to go to a platform. And I'll explain all that to you. So let's go back to the first proposition. You don't sell individual services, you sell bundles. Now, why is that? Well, all of you out there who are thinking about, going into large corporate consulting, let me stop you and give you some pause to that thought. It is a tough business out there with competing with the big companies. All right, McKinsey, Accenture, KPMG, or BearingPoint, or Deloitte. Those are all tough companies to go up against. And if it's just you, man, you better have a reputation as a thought leader. You better have something published. You better have something that people are going to look at and go, I want this guy. Because you don't have a consulting house behind you. You don't have a staff of people behind you. And so what you're going to be basically doing is selling you, showing up, and then basically using your brain to figure out what they need. Now, it's lucrative and it works well, but it's tough. Also, is that if you're not fully credentialed, and I don't mean a certification, but the large companies don't pay any attention to certifications. They're going to want to know what have you published, and they're going to look at your academic credentials, and they're going to look at, do you have a PhD, do you have a master's degree, and fundamentally, exceedingly difficult to come in as an individual consultant in a large corporation and not have at least a master's degree. I have a master's degree for one reason: ticket punch. What I learned there was wonderful, and I've applied it, and I learned from some great people. However, I knew what I was doing when I got it, and it was simply, I'm going to get this so I can then go out and sell my body, so to speak. Okay. Anyway, I'm talking to all of you who have said, you know where I want to go? I want to go into the small business market. I want to sell to the business owner, the entrepreneur, the company's under $10 million. Now, our sweet spot here at IBGR is that we're basically talking to business owners at about $5 million in revenue USD and someplace around 50 employees. Now, anything that we cover could easily be a $10 million company with 200 people. But the sweet spot for us, and I suspect the sweet spot for you may be certainly under 10 and maybe under 5. Now, this is a challenging market unto itself, only because when you're selling to large corporations, the CEOs, the executives have purchased consulting. So they're fairly sophisticated buyers of consulting services. And what that means is that they can evaluate somebody pretty quickly to say, one, do they know what they're talking about? Number two, are they the type of individual that I want to bring in? In other words, it's not so much your integrity or your pleasing. It's just, do you fit into the environment we're in there that's in his business or her business? With the small business, you got a whole different problem because you're not going to be able to use the model of selling your time, the selling your expertise. So you're selling to a business owner who's not a sophisticated purchaser. That's not a slight against them. It's simply saying that here's the deal. They don't buy consulting services. They don't know what to look for. And number two is they don't know what the price tag is. When I was working with companies like IBM, America Online, General Motors, Delphi Automotive, Signature Flight Services, Glaxo Pharmaceuticals, that's a pretty good list, Sealand, they are willing to pay serious coin if you can demonstrate the value. In other words, you could charge anywhere from $2,500 a day to $4,000 a day. You talk to a small business owner and say, and by the way, it's going to take me a couple months to help you out, and it's going to be $2,500 a day. If they don't have a heart attack, then they're going to attack you for insulting their intelligence. And quite frankly, you're not worth in that environment $2,500. Now, that whole monologue gets me to this. What you want to do is you want to number one, take everything that you know and break it down into little pieces. Right? Everything that you know, break it into little pieces, into deliverables. Now, we talked about this earlier, and I think it was in show 2 and 3, CIB 2 and CIB 3, where we talked about all of the various practice domains out there available in the consulting industry. Now, let's see how good I am if I can remember them. You have strategy and OD, which was basically where I cut my teeth. And strategy is helping them come up with their yearly 5-year plan. Also kind of converting that into operations. And organizational development, OD, is around organizational effectiveness. So a lot of times you're brought in and they look at the company and they're saying, hey, it should be producing X amount of revenue. It is not. What's up? And you're brought in to kind of look for the inefficiencies and fix that. Okay, so that's one. The second one is operations management. And that is all process. That is, you're looking at how they make things. You're looking at how to deliver the services. You're looking at back office. You're looking at all of those particular pieces. And by the way, as I go through this list, all of those have a series of subdomains. Some have 6 or 7, others have 3 or 4. I recommend that you go back and when you either, well, not right now, but later on, look for CIB 2, CIB 3, CIB 4. I think that those should cover all of that where I get into those domains, because in some cases, you're going to be the strategy and OD consultant. Other cases, there are pieces of that, like in operations management. You may want to take just lean and make lean your sole focus in terms of what you're doing as a consultant. So you got operations management. Number 3, you have financial management. And that is really where we're talking about fractional CFOs. We're talking about everything from the very top, where you're looking at strategic use of money. How do you invest resources of the company, profitability? What do you do around shareholders? All the way down to, bookkeeping and accounting. That's a whole range right there. The third area is in IT. and that's information technology and everything that you're doing about building the backbone. This is really, if like operations, this is really the geek land. Okay, this is where if you've had an IT job for a number of years, you can come in, and if you've been from IT, you know that nobody's an IT expert. There are so many different subdomains to IT that you can pick from that. The next one is marketing and sales, and that looks at marketing, sales, and service. I would include customer service in that only because any well-run organization understands that selling uh, requires some sort of customer service, because customer service is your upselling methodology. If in fact you have bad customer service, then you're constantly in the game of customer acquisition. You're constantly going, okay, I've got to bring in more people, more customers, because I can't keep the ones I have. And that's 5 times more expensive to do than it is to upsell the ones that you have. And remember that thing on upsell, because that's where we're going to go with the bundles. Then after that, and HR is a world onto itself. And so part of that is on the compliance side of human resources. I've had the good fortune or misfortune of having that job once, and I was hired as a consultant to come in as a fractional HR executive. And my job was to get things done as we hired a real professional in the job. And so part of your job is compliance. Part of your job is the recruitment of people, and part of your job is around performance areas. And that's a great area. For example, if you are an HR coach or consultant, a lot of them are really good there. The compliance firms are typically employee assistance, payroll, legal issues, and most of us are probably not ready for those. Let me see. I think I got all of them there. There's more there. Go look at them. Now let me get back to this issue of bundles, and that is what you want to do is you want to take what you know and you want to break it into little pieces, right? So I know how to do this, 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 and this. There's many ways of doing it. You could take a look at all the things that you've learned in your life and just make a list of them and say, okay, what help could you provide if that was the area? And I would recommend, and again, go back to CIB 2 and 3, probably 4, those 3 shows and show notes, and take a look at those, because those fit practices. And what you can do is you can begin to assemble a practice that makes you somewhat unique. Like, I'll give you an example. I spent a lot of time doing lean manufacturing. Most strategy and OD people don't do that. That's not something that they do. So I could go into a company, look at strategy, and also say, hey, as I'm doing OD, I can tell you what the inefficiencies are in the company and fix it. And then on the HR side, I could also pick up on the issue of why aren't we getting the performance out of people that we should be having? And so just like you, I can go into several different areas, and within those several areas, I can put together my own practice. And that's really what you're looking to do, is you want to have kind of a unique offer. Now, the challenge with that is finding customers. Because if you think about it, we're kind of working backwards. You're figuring out what you can do, and then we're looking for customers rather than the other way around. But in this particular case, that's what you're going to do. Now, the idea behind the bundles is simply, now I come up with a basic offer, and then I figure out, as I work with an account, I'll pick a little from here and a little from here and a little from here and a little from here, and I'll assemble that. Well, that gets me down to number 2, and that is bundle based upon your value ladder. I talked about this last week a little bit. Let me just go a little bit more. And by the way, on the notes, you'll see that there are, in blue, there are links there to look at value ladder and this idea of an asset-based consulting company, which I just described. So the value ladder basically says, what I want to do here is I want to take my offer and I want to create a minimum of 3 levels. Well, maybe I should say, shoot for 3. Don't go beyond that unless you have to. We here at the radio station, our offer is actually 4. In fact, let me address that point. I bet you didn't know this. Of course, if you listened to me, I would have told you, but I'm not sure you heard it. That if you look at IBGR, what are we really? Well, we are 3 businesses at one time. One is we are a radio station. We operate like any radio station that you would find if you turned on the car radio or turn on the radio in the house, okay, or in the office. So that's the way we operate. So we're a radio station. So look at that as the plumbing. Then you have the water that's coming out. Now, we don't do politics. We don't do entertainment. So what's the water? Well, it's good water. It's consulting and coaching water. Predominantly consulting water, because it's hard to coach in a one-way relationship. Here, you can consult with people because you can lay out, here's the things you need to consider. And then the third business is we are building a membership organization that is much more than a chamber of commerce. In other words, if you look at the chamber of commerce model, we do what they don't do, haven't done, and won't do. And so we have built those together. So we actually have 4 offers. So let me start with the first one, which I call L0. That's the way I code it here inside the company. That is what we're doing right now. I'm talking to you. You're not talking to me. And what's happening is I'm giving you information, and all that's for free. Okay. Now, level 1 for all of you out there. Level 1 would be your basic offer. What you want to make sure here with level 1 is that they get enough that they don't have to buy the next offer, that you do not have to upsell them in order to get whatever results you create in terms of expectations. And so that is your basic offer. You can price that lower than you typically would. Why? Because it's an entry level. You get an opportunity for them to get to know you and to trust you, and then you have the opportunity to upsell. And on that issue here, the other thing I want to say to you is that a lot of people would, when they talk about sales, would say, well, you know what you want to do in the sales process is you want to build trust. I don't believe that's possible. I think trust only comes around when, in fact, you have done what you've said you're going to do, and they said, okay, now they deliver on promise. So for me, in the sales process, it's all about risk reduction. How do I reduce the risk that they're going to take? So look at your first level offer as risk reduction. They're paying you to do it. You're not making a ton, but you've got cash flow into the business, and you're able to build a relationship. Now, let me jump over to level 2. Level 2 is your core offer. That's the one you want to sell. And core 2, or level 2, is everything that they need. It's not superfluous. You didn't add any whistles and bells to it. You just simply said, here's the offer. This is the one that you want to price accurately, because this is the one that's going to provide most of your margin. Then level 3 is the Mercedes, the Rolls, the Cadillac. In other words, all of the stuff that you didn't offer in the core, you put into here. Now, and you price that accordingly. And the reason that you do that is, yes, some people will buy that. That's wonderful because you're going to make really good margins on it. But what it does do for you, it anchors your level 2 pricing. So when they look at it and go, wow, that's expensive, then they come down and they take a look at what level 2 is. They take that. When I was doing business turnarounds, I had the difference between my core offer, or my level 2, and level 3 was enormous. But my level 3 was basically come in and run your company, and it cost you $75,000 a quarter to have me do it. I didn't want to do many of those because, you know what, I can only do one. On the other hand, the other one was priced at $6,000 for a quarter. Now, that made the $6,000 one look awful good, did it not? Why? Because they said, wow, you could come in and do all this. He can do all that, but maybe what we do is we go with the other offer. So that's the issue about the bundling. And if you need any help or support with that, just kind of put that in the comment area. My computer keeps going to sleep on me, and so I have to reopen it. Put it into either LinkedIn or Facebook, which is where we're at. And by the way, if you're looking for us at LinkedIn or Facebook and you're just listening on the radio, here's what you want to do. What you want to go to IBGR Network, no decimal point or period, on Facebook or on LinkedIn. You'll find our business page, and put in a comment there, and you want some information, some tools about how to ladder your business or come up with a value ladder. All right, so the last one is automate non-personal functions. So I'm going to deal with this quickly. We got a break coming up on top of us. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to go because this is the true meat of it, okay? And so what you're looking to do here is, how much of what I've got going on can I put on a platform and automate? Now, most of you should have a CRM system, customer relationship management system. That is an excellent place to start. That and your accounting system. And so what a CRM does is you can create, and just about every one of them out there today have the ability to put workplace rules in. And so when a request comes in, you can set it up to where that request, something you send out an email, one comes back to you, that it's automatically routed someplace that says send the second email. And of course, you've been doing mail merge forever, so it puts in the right name and all that. So a lot of those functions, you don't have to sit there and go, okay, I've got 10 of these to respond to today. The computer is automatically going, or the platform that you're on is going to automatically do that. If you do the same thing with your accounting system, let's say you go with QuickBooks and your CRM is Salesforce. Let's just pick those two. Or you go with Zoho, which has the whole package, is that the customer's actions show up in your accounting. And if you're wondering what the customer is buying, that is showing up in your CRM. And so that type of automation makes you look like you've got 4 or 5 people in the company when you only got one. Now, when we come back, I'm going to be talking about another platform, but here is the essence of your approach. And the model that we use is called FIT. And of course, you can play with that. I played with it for quite a while to come up with it. How fit is the company to meet its goals? How fit is it for the owner to realize why he started the company and what he's trying to achieve? Okay, so let me take it out from here. You're listening to IBGR.network. That's IBGR.network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for the show. And this is CIB 08, and that is delivering consulting virtually. Don't go anywhere. And when I had a radio station that was on the air and you had a dial, I would say, don't touch that dial. I'll slap your hand. Be back in 2. Okay, for everybody out there. Okay, that's the first spurt. And now when we come back, we'll have a second podcast. And the reason we're doing the 30-minute segments is that these podcasts are being shared with a couple of other partners that we have in the system, predominantly Startup Radio or StartupRad.io, which is our news partner. And they come out of Europe. And what they do is they talk about the tech scene, startup tech scene in Europe. A lot of Germany because they're coming from Frankfurt, but really it's more European. And so we share recordings or podcasts. So we do 30 minutes. Most of all the other shows here at IBGR are 15-minute duration. All right, I've got about 2 minutes before we're back on. The other thing I want to say is that please put your comments in there. If there's anything about this topic that you want to know more about, that's where you're going to find it because I'm going to look at it. And what I want to do is I want to start building a relationship with all of you. And so this one way isn't going to work very well. So if you come in and you're on either one of the business pages, then we can start talking. Even better, both of them have their own private groups. Our private group over at Facebook is Build Your Business or Build My Business Today. And I get the pronouns mixed up here. That's one. It's a private group. Ask to get in, and we definitely share a lot of the applications and tools in there as well as engage in conversation. If you're over on the Facebook side, then we have the IBGR Growth Community. Same thing. Different platforms. We're basically doing the same thing. All right. So when we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the FIT model, which is I'd say it's proprietary to me. Okay. It is and it isn't. But I came up with this, and I'll tell you where I got it from a coaching company that we were working at Delphi Automotive. And so I've been using this model for about 25 years. Okay, here we go. We're about 15, 20 seconds out. And so I'll give you the countdown. So if you're in the studio with me on a microphone and you're looking through the glass at the panel and you're looking at the studio engineer, which is a hard thing to do on the internet, what would you be getting? Well, here's what I would be doing. 3, 2, and notice it's not the other finger. 1. And we're back. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for today's show. And this is show or podcast or recording, depending on how you're picking it up, CIB.08. And what this is about, the series that we're working under, is how do you, if you've made a decision that you're going to make a career change, you always wanted to be a consultant, this whole season, all 13 shows, what are we focused on? Helping you start your own consulting company. All right. Now, today, we're going to be talking about how to deliver those services virtually. You need to go to the website if you're not already there, ibgr.network, ibgr.network. It is our call sign, IBGR, like any radio station. Our name, network, our URL, ibgr.network, and it's also our broadcast frequency. When you get to the website, click shows, click notes. And when you get to the notes, you'll come to where all the show notes are posted. And if you're listening live, mine should be at the top of the queue, CIB.08. If, on the other hand, you're listening to this as a replay, or you're listening to later on, maybe next week as a podcast, then what you need to do is you get the show notes, because we don't write these for ourselves. We write them for you. And what you put in the search bar, right next to this, you'll see a search bar for a new choice of business search. Put in CIB.08, creating a consulting/improvement company or business, and up it'll pop. All right, let's scroll on down. Where we are right now is right below automate non-personal functions, because a lot of this can be automated yourself. So here's the story behind this model. We had a contract. We were doing a kind of a weird version of lean. Now, here's the background of the story. General Motors and Delphi. And General Motors was in the process of spinning off Delphi. Delphi was an in-house tier 1 supplier of parts. In a particular case, the places we were making valve trains, we were making fuel injectors, we were making catalytic converters, exhaust pipes, things of that nature. And so what General Motors was doing was sourcing all that internally. Well, they just weren't competitive. And when they, because the Japanese were really taking it to them. And so they weren't competitive. So the idea was to spin off Delphi as one of their tier 1 and make Delphi run as a company, which turned out not to work very well because of the culture. Delphi's culture was too close to General Motors, and they were too used to being captive. In other words, General Motors had to buy fuel injectors from us at Delphi. Well, now they don't, and now I'm competing against the manufacturer in Japan who has higher quality at lower price. So they made a decision. They hired a guy by the name of Jim Womack, who just wrote a book on lean thinking, and they were going to employ lean across the organization. So we were in Delphi already, but we weren't asked by management. We got the job because we were connected to the union. Now, don't ask me how to explain all that, because we don't have the time for it. It was the most bizarre thing, because I would come into the plant and I talk to the plant manager, and I'd give him the spiel and the whole bit, because we were paid out of a different pot of money. So it didn't come out of the plant manager's pocket. So he's going, you're going to help me improve quality, reduce cost, and corporate's paying for it. Okay, plant manager is paying attention to me. Then he finds out that we're there on joint money. Joint money meaning that not only are we being financed by General Motors management, we're being funded by the UAW. And he looks at me and says, how the blank do you pull that off? And I said, don't ask me. But what would happen is I had the backing of the union hierarchy. And now what I had to do is, that didn't necessarily mean that I had support of the rank and file. So now I had to deal with the bargaining chairman. And in that particular environment, the plant manager and the bargaining chairman are basically peers. They may not be peers in reality, but in that setting, in that environment, they are peers. And so I've got the union quasi backing to bring this in. And so what we did is we went out and hired a coaching firm, because we had never done this. Because one of the things we had to do to get the productivity improvements was that we had to help first line supervision and what they call manufacturing managers. Each part of the plant had a manufacturing manager. So we had to help them do a better job. And the company I was working with was a company out of Victoria, British Columbia, called Ryberg Levy. And guys were great. They'd cut their teeth working oil platforms, so they knew what they were doing. And they had a model called FAIR, which is focus, accountability, involvement, and reward was their coaching model. And it worked pretty well, and I watched it. And I was going, gee, I could do a better job of that, because I wasn't looking at it as a coach. I was looking at it as a consultant. Now, of course, they were relying upon us for all the technical stuff, and they were dealing with more of what a traditional coach does. If this is what you got to do, how do you spend your time to get it done? And so I went, well, what if we put them the two together? So that's where the model for FIT came from. And I've used this for about 2 decades as a consulting approach. So look at it this way. How fit is your customer's business for what the owner wants to achieve? So the first place we've got to start is, let's identify the root cause of why they're not achieving what the owner has set out to achieve. And the word I love to use, going back to my engineering and science background, is the lever. Where's the leverage? And so any of you familiar with the great, probably the smartest Greek ever to live, smarter than Aristotle, was a guy by name Archimedes. And Archimedes had a quote that is pretty true. He said, if you give me a long enough lever, I could lift the world. And because he understood the mathematics of it, now that lever may have to be 1 billion miles long, but you get the point, is that you can get leverage on anything if you know what you're doing. Any of those of you who work as a mechanic and you've got a bolt that's not, or a nut that's not going to come off, what do? You put a tube on there, a lever bar, and then you use that on your socket. Hopefully you don't break it, but you use that for leverage to pull it out. All right, so what we do, and this is what you need to do as the consultant, is to work with them closely to get at what is the root cause of why the company is not performing the way the owner thinks it ought to be performing. Because if it is performing the way they think it ought to be performing, why are you there? I mean, you're not going to provide any real value, and they're going to feel very ripped off for the money that they spent. And so there's a number of ways of doing that, but fundamentally, the way that you want to handle it is you want to identify what is the root cause, and do not accept from the owner or whoever your contact is in the firm that they have it right. Now you need to do that with some respect, but what you've got to do is say to yourself, if I allow them to give me the wrong diagnosis and we treat the symptom, this isn't going away. Who's at fault? Well, at least on the surface, they are. Who's paying me? Reality is that's my fault. And so what I want to do here, let's get to the automation, is one of the ways that I can get this done is the production of assessments and surveys. Things that I can do to collect what we would call the quantitative information. You've got to get a set of numbers so you can do comparisons. On the other hand, we want to do interviews. Now, this is easy to do. You can automate this very easily. In fact, we're doing it right here. So for example, assessments and surveys. Go to Google Forms. You can build an assessment and survey there. It is going to download to a spreadsheet. You can program the spreadsheet, okay, or get a little help from somebody. It will crunch all the numbers. So what you do is you basically build some sort of instrumentation that's automated that you give them a link to that will collect the data. Now, the challenge with that is the information you have will be incomplete. So the other part of it is, well, let's do some interviews. Now, well, hey, we could do an interview right here. If this was a Zoom meeting and you were on the other side, I could interview you. And the reason for the interview is what I lack with the numbers is I don't have any qualitative information. In other words, the numbers tell me a lot of things, but I could come to the wrong conclusion. So what I want to do now is I want to do those interviews, and I can do them, virtually, just like we're doing right here, and collect that information. And I'm going to put the two of them together. The numbers are the skeleton. They're the bones. The interviews are the flesh, the muscles. And the interviews, it takes a little bit longer, but pretty simple. All you do is once you get them done, you begin looking for themes. So let's say you did 20 interviews. You probably won't do that many, but let's take 20. You randomly pick out 5 interviews out of there, and you go through them, and you begin labeling for themes. You got this theme, we don't pay people enough. We got this theme of the equipment breaks down, etc. Then what you do is you basically build a book. Then you look at the other 15 and you begin coding it from this. Now, what will happen to the other 15, it'll add a few more. So you're going to come out of this with 5 or 6 themes that should make the numbers make sense to you. Once you've got that done, now the issue is, how do you do improvement? Right? Because the eye, once we got the focus, we know where the leverage point is. We know what the root cause is. Now what we want to do is we want to improve it. Well, you can do training, coaching, and consulting virtually. In fact, a platform that we've just recently moved to from one that we had that was okay but wasn't doing the job. And I'll give you the name of it. It's Coach Accountable. And on the Coach Accountable, we have all the tools to be able to basically, if it's a consulting issue, consult with people. Give them more information to help them work through it. Coaching is that it's more one-on-one, kind of like we're doing here. Or training, where I can put people into classrooms and take them through it. And I can do all of that virtually and as I work along. Now, track, even though it comes number 3, is really what's going to be going on from the very beginning, because what I want to do in this process is I don't want to rely on the end to produce the result. Who knows what we're going to get? And I don't care how smart you are and how many times you've done this, there are going to be surprises. You're going to get off track. So with the tracking piece, what you're doing here is, okay, we've got a set of milestones. All right, we're gonna solve this problem, and then this problem, and this problem. Well, what I want to do is I want to track as that goes along. And after the first one, I want to have a meeting with the client or whoever it is that I'm working with in that account and say, okay, here's what we did. Here are the numbers. What do we do next? And this is really an agile methodology for how do we work through to the end result. Because my guess is you've done a good work. You're 75, 80% right in the first metric. But 20% is going to be invariance to what you wanted to get. We didn't get that. It's not working. Why? Let's fix that. Then you go to the second one, and hopefully what you've done is you're taking this deviation, if I can kind of do it that way, you're taking this deviation and you're bringing it back into whatever the control limits that you have. In other words, we've got to get to this particular point. You can do all of that on a platform. You don't need to be there in person doing this with the individual. You can be doing this on the air. Now, we're not getting paid by Coach Accountable to do this, and who knows, a year from now we may move to another platform. But I can guarantee you that that is out there for you to use. And if you are an expert at what you're doing, this is not that hard to do. And so by putting that together, this is how you can do it. Now, what can't you do? All right. So let's talk about the other side of this. All right. You can't walk the property. You can't get the ambiance. Every business has its own frequency. It has its own hum to it, and you can't pick up on it. Companies that have a bad hum, you'll know immediately. Kind of like sailing if you spending time in a sailboat, you touched the lines, they're going up to the sails, goes up to the sheets, or you get your hand on the tiller over here. You can tell when the boat is trimmed or it's not trimmed. You can feel it by the vibration because it's got different vibrations. Same thing with any type of company. You can get kind of the ambiance of it. Well, you can't really do that by doing it virtually. That is also what the importance of the interviews are, because one of the things I would recommend to you in your interview is a question. And by the way, if you want a list of questions to ask that are generic, you would have to add some, because I don't know exactly what the problem is you're working on. Is either go to Facebook or LinkedIn. Okay, IBGR Network, no decimal point or period, just IBGR Network. Go to our business page and join our private group, IBGR Growth Community over at LinkedIn. Build My Business Today over on Facebook, and I will give you a list of questions. But here's one. Here's a nugget you can take out of here if you're in the coaching or consulting business, and that is ask them, what are the issues that are non-discussable? Let me say that again. What's non-discussable around here? In other words, if you bring it up, people will not only deny it's a problem, though it is, but people will actually attack you for bringing it up. It's kind of the kid's story of the emperor has no clothes. Every organization has a list of undiscussables. You want to get at those, because that may be actually where the root lies, or at least it's going to be much more informative than you believe it's going to be. And so that's a great one that I like to ask, and that gives me it's not a killer substitute for walking the facility, but at least it gives me some of the things that a straight question or a straight assessment survey does not do. All right, so let me get down to what you need to do. Even though I was kind of doing that, it's really simple. Don't sell individual services. Build bundles. Okay? Say it again. Don't sell individual services. Build bundles. If you need help with that, you know what to do. You need to join one of our private groups, either over at LinkedIn or on Facebook. And I've already cited it enough, so you know how to get there. And if you join those groups, I will show you how to do that. Your bundles need to be based upon your value ladder. Okay? So I don't build a bundle independently of my value ladder. I say, okay, I got level 1 offer. It's basic, it's complete, but it's basic. It's got a great low price point. The goal here is twofold. 1, generate immediate cash flow for the business. Number 2 is give them the opportunity to like us and respect us so we can upsell. Level 2 is the core offer. This is where your margins are. If they buy this, they don't need to buy anything else. Level 3 is what's the Cadillac, what's the Mercedes, what's all the added features. And again, the power of level 3 is not so much the additional components of the offer. It is your ability to set a much higher price so you can anchor the one you want to sell. You don't want to sell a lot of one. You don't want to sell a lot of three. You want to sell a lot of two because that's the way you're going to structure it. And again, I can show you how to do that. Automate everything that does not require a personal interaction with people. That way you can build a pretty large consulting firm with having no employees, certainly nobody internal. And then finally, take a look at platforms, the platforms that are out there. I'm recommending Coach Accountable right now only because it's the one we're on. We don't have a financial relationship with them. They're not doing any commercials here, et cetera, et cetera. We've been looking and looking and looking. We tried one. It was too much like Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's not a put down, but what we didn't need was another social media platform. What we needed was a interactive project management platform would be the best way I would describe it. That's got all the features into it, and we can run our business out of Coach Accountable. All right, so a couple other things here. I didn't hit this before the last break, and I want to do it now. What we're building here in IBGR is basically this. We're trying to create the world of business, everything you need, all the resources at your fingertips, everything that you need to start, grow, or exit the business is here. And it's just not the organization, and it's just not me. We have a number of hosts in here who are experts. You want a fractional CFO? We got a couple. You want some innovative people who understand accounting and bookkeeping? We got that. You want experts in agile or lean in terms of approaches to build really good processes. We have that. When it comes to marketing, we have a marketing agency here. They have a show that's, in fact, I think they're running tonight. Now, tonight is Wednesday in Sydney, Australia, so it's coming from there. But we have people who are dyed-in-the-wool salespeople, and we've got sales shows as well as customer service. We have people here who are in the HR industry who understand how to build the type of workforce that provides you a competitive advantage. And also, we have a crew of people here who are serial entrepreneurs who have done this a bunch of times. This is my 5th business. And so what we bring to this is that if nothing else, we can make a list of everything you shouldn't do. Now, think about that. If you had 5 choices and we can rule 2 or 3 of them out and go, no, don't do that because then here's why, then the odds are in your favor. You get to pick between 2. Either one of them probably work. It's more about the efficiency of it. But the way we do that, if I jump down to the mobile app, is that what we do is we place in the palm of your hand solutions on demand that our app gives you the ability to listen to any show, listen to podcasts, review the show notes, join a community, the community that we're building here, the ability to contact or talk to anybody who is part of the host or ask for help. And so all of it is there in the palm of your hand, in the app, in your phone. It's free. So all you got to do is you can click the mobile app here, which will take you to our website, which is ibgr.app, app. And then on there are 2 buttons, one for Apple and the other one or iOS, and the other one for Google or Droid. Or you can go to your supplier. You can go to the Apple store, and you can get the app, and it's IBGR, one way to get it, or you can put in Business Growth Radio. Either one of those will take you. Same exact thing over at Google, and then you have the app. You load it on your phone, and we'll roll. And so, like I said, everything that you need to run the business is there and made available to you. And by the way, and we go back to the levels, that's our level 0 offer. Now, if it's that good, wait till we talk to you about what level 1, 2, and 3 is. Well, level 3, in fact, let me go there. We're starting our first incubator, and it's going to happen sometime later in the year, either at the end of September or sometime in the middle of October. We're still getting the final date, and all of you who have done events like that know the issue is that once you fix the date, you want to stick to it. You don't want to come back and go, oh, we made a mistake, and we're going to push the date back. But we are going to be running in this calendar year an incubator. What's an incubator? For all of you who want to start a business, or you're just at the beginning and you're very young, what are the things you need to do? That's our level 3 offer. You come into the incubator and we will actually walk you through how to grow your company, the type of consulting that you cannot afford to buy, right? So that's what we've got going on here. The other parts of it is that make sure that you check out our calendar, ibgr.network. When you go to the homepage, it will give you our calendar of everybody that's on the air, and you can take a look at their expertise. Monday is Finance Day. Tuesday is Operations, which is today, and I'm kind of closing that out because I'm talking about the operational side of starting a consulting firm. And this is really operation and the development of products and services, as well as platforms. Tonight because at 6 o'clock, it's no longer 6 o'clock in New York. It's 8 o'clock in the morning in Sydney, Australia. Wednesdays, we are in the marketing, sales, and service. We run through the day. Then on a Thursday, it's all about people. And then finally on Friday is a conversation with the owner. And what I mean by a conversation with the owner is, okay, how are you going to ramp up your business? And we'll share with you a lot of the things that we've developed over the years. So, for example, we have one approach, one that I use most of the time, and we call it the self-managed organization. Now, if you're looking to get into consulting business, this would be an excellent place to start, because if you're going to work as a consultant, you can either be a problem solver where your job is to fix things that break or go wrong. Okay, that's one option. Or number two is you come in with kind of a philosophy of how do they build a company. Certainly, if you're going to come in on the strategy and OD side, and that's where you're going to consult, then it is obligated on you to have a paradigm, a mindset, an approach that says this is what I'm trying to achieve. So one of the ones that we have developed here is what we call the self-managed organization. And what that means is, what if the organization basically could run on its own without you? Now, that's never going to happen in totality. You are critical and important to the company as the owner. But what if, for example, you decide to take a month off and go on vacation? Can the company operate? And what we talk about is, if you want to build a self-managed organization, what do you have to do in finance? What do you have to do in operations? What do you have to do in marketing, sales, and service? What do you have to do with people? What is required? What are the things that you've got to do? And how do you take that out? How do you implement that within the company? That is one. Another area that we work in is in the area of fragility. In other words, taking the work of Nassim Taleb and what he did on Anti-Fragile, is we've developed a methodology for how do I take a company that will not only survive something like the pandemic, but actually will grow from the disruption. In other words, Zoom is a great example, was perfectly positioned for the pandemic, because when it hit, Zoom was doing well. We were using them. But I wish I had stock in Zoom, because I imagine when the pandemic hit, all the people that were not early adopters, all the people that were resistant, going, you know what, I got to get belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball with customers. I can't possibly sell online, and with some justification, because if the customer doesn't like it, it doesn't matter whether you like the technology, the customer doesn't. Well, guess where we were? There was no other way when we had the lockdown that you could deal with people. And so this idea of building a company that is, I call it idiot proof. In other words, the politicians, the bureaucrats can't kill you. Now, it's not idiot proof from you. You're the owner, so you have the inherent right to be a stupid if you like, because I've been there myself many times. But that is another area that we have a whole practice area in. How do you build a robust company that not only can survive any disruption like this, but a company that's actually going to prosper? All right, so I think I'm down to the end of my time. I greatly appreciate you listening. Now, next week, what we're going to be talking about here, I took that book down, so I can't tell you. No, I'm going to be talking about now how to actually grow the consulting firm. Now, I remember what I was going to do, and that's one reason. The other reasons we have notes is sometimes you have a brain burp like that. And you're going, what was I going to say? What we're going to be doing next week is we're going to be talking about, okay, let's take it step by step. How do we build this consulting firm? And if you're interested, I would love to help you build your own consulting company. I've done it 5 times. I've messed up a couple times. I had a couple that got very profitable. And so I think I might understand it a little bit. Certainly, I can share that expertise with you, and then you can make the decision of whether or not you would like to work with us. All right. So with that, I greatly appreciate you being here. I haven't been looking at what's going on in LinkedIn, Facebook. I've been more concentrating on talking to you directly. I will now, when we get off the air, I will now be taking a look at those. And you got any comments in there, I'll get right back to you. But it is in your best interest as a business owner, if you're interested in growing your company, regardless of the topic, I don't care who's on the air or what we're discussing, is go to Facebook or LinkedIn and go to our business page, IBGR Network, and then join the two respective groups. We're in there. Last week, I put in how to a template for how to create a killer position description, because that's where the conversation was last week in one of our other shows. And I'll put this information in there if, in fact, you want me to, but you got to tell me. All right. So with that, I greatly appreciate you listening. My name is William Eastman. This is show or podcast CIB.08. And that is how to build a consulting firm and how to deliver your products and services virtually. All right, so make sure you go nowhere. We've got Ellen McElhaney coming up next. She is a fractional CFO, and but she's going to be talking about something a little bit different today. And so, but in fact, she's our CFO. All right, so with that, have a great day. Thanks for listening. I'm going to hang around in Facebook and LinkedIn if you got any questions. Eastman out. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to turn this off. That's right. I'm still on. Sorry, I thought I got off the air. All right, so let me take a look at let me see where we are. I'm going to get off the air and I'm going to be looking at Facebook and LinkedIn separately. Okay. So thanks for joining us, and I'm out. Ciao.